Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm So Crafty Liz. Today's tutorial is for the marathon series for the month of May featuring the Gabriella from the Empurrium. Thank you so much to Brittany for allowing us to use her tutorial in today's marathon. Here's my Gabriella at 30%. It was interesting. So it opens up. It has this slip pocket, words, and it even has a functional zipper pocket. So it came out so cute. Let's get sewing. Okay, gonna go over my pieces for our Gabriella. I have my flap and lining. This is the prom pink from Mormino, and I've already stitched on my whiskers and my nose and attached my magnet. Then I have the lower exterior flap and already added my tail. So this is my exterior and my lining. And then I have the two cuts for the lining for the flap pocket. And over here I have my base and my two gusset sides, and then I have my lining, gusset, and base, which I already sewed together. I have the strap that I'm going to be using for the handle, and two exteriors and two linings. Then I have my ears that we're going to attach and my zipper. So the first thing that I'm going to do is add my ears, get all of this out of my way. And you want these to be the way that you are going to see. Nope, they don't go on that piece. They go on this piece. And you want them to be face up so that when this folds down and they flip up, they're facing the right way. And there is a measurement in the pattern for how far apart these should be from the center. But as you can tell, mine is miniature. So my measurement is a little bit different. So I'm just going to clip these in place and base them on. Now I can take my flap and put them right sides together, match up the centers, and then stitch this together. Make sure you backstitch at the beginning and the end. And then we can flip this up. And we want that seam allowance going down behind our back panel, and then we're going to top stitch on that seam. Okay. Oh, look at it. It's a cute little kitty. So I added a piece of double-sided tape to my flap, and I've already attached my zipper tabs to the end of my zipper, and we're going to mark the center. I'm going to take and match up these centers. And then I don't have a whole lot of room to work with. This is quite possibly the smallest cut of zipper tape I have ever worked with. But I'm just going to base that on. And when I get about halfway, I can move my zipper pulls to the other end. And finish stitching. And my zipper tabs are hanging over the edge because I need to cut them down. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I find it easier to sew them on before cutting them down than making it exact and then trying to match everything up. So now we're going to take one of our linings and clip the center, and it's going to go right sides together on top of that zipper tape. And then now we can stitch at our full seam allowance. Now I'm obviously using a much smaller seam allowance than what is given in the pattern. Kind of have to. There wouldn't be anything left if I didn't. So stitch all the way across, back stitch at the start and stop. Move those zipper pulls out of your way. And then now we can flip this over and we can push out our flap and our zipper tape and fold this up. Move my zipper pulls to the middle. I'm just matching up those sides, getting that straight, and then I can kind of lay this flat, and then we're going to top stitch along this edge here against our zipper. And it's going to give us a cute little faux mouth. Move those zipper pulls out of my way. So now on this side, I'm going to take, no I'm not, because I didn't put it together. We're going to take our flap lining with our magnet and put it with our lower flap lining, right sides together. And we're going to sew across the top of that. And just like we did for the exterior, flip it open, push the seam down behind the lower portion, and top stitch. Well, me and my thread does not want to cooperate. There we go. Now I can put these right sides together, match up the center, and go ahead and move my zipper pulls out of the way. I'm going to do just like I did before, and I'm going to baste the zipper on before I attach the other half of the lining. Except for I may need to add another clip. Can't add too many clips because they start getting in the way with it being so small. Move the zipper pulls. And I just kind of hold it with my finger up there where it's supposed to go. So now, on this side, we can add the other lining, right sides together. Stitch all the way across. And one more time, let's move our zipper pulls. Okay. Chances are, if you're making this, unless you're making it the same size as me, you're not going to watch my tutorial for how to make this, but I think I didn't do it. When you top stitch here, you only want to top stitch from the zipper tab to the zipper tab. And I don't know. We'll see what happens since I went all the way across. Since this is my second one of these, I thought I would get away with not having any issues, but that didn't happen. Okay, now we're going to take our exteriors and put them right sides together. And I'm going to put a clip here to hold that, and then on this side, match up our linings and clip here. Now over here on the exterior side, I'm going to match up those seams and clip. And then I'm going to come over to the other side, match up those same seams, throw some clips in the floor. Okay. And then match up the top seam. I don't think it's going to matter too much that I top stitched across the top all the way, but don't do that. Brittany has a full tutorial on her channel as well. So I'm just matching up all of the edges. So now in the pattern, you would start down here and you would stitch along this edge across the lining bottom and then back down this edge all the way to the end. You would leave this part open on the exterior side for turning. Because this is so small, it's nearly impossible to turn it. So I'm going to make a little bit of a modification to help me get it flipped out the way I want it to be. So I'm going to start at my seam right here. Which is technically the part of the flap that folds over. And then stitch all the way down the lining across the bottom edge. I'm going to go one more stitch. And then back up. And I did taper my lining seam allowance in just a little bit more to make that pocket fit better. And then I'm going to need my little scrap of vinyl to get me over that zipper tab. And I'm only going to stitch down to the seam on my flap. And then I'm going to stop there. And then this is the inside of my pocket, so now I can turn it out. So I will turn this and be right back. All right, I have it all flipped out. Look how cute. Okay, I'll quit gawking over the adorableness. So because I didn't sew this lower part right here, this is what it looks like. And I did it this way where I only sewed halfway so that I could turn it. But when we attach this to our lower panel, this creates a slip pocket here. And you top stitch on this, but you don't go all the way up to the flap. You only go up to about right here. There's a measurement in the pattern for where you're supposed to stop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold this in, and I'm going to add a little bit of my glue and clip it and let that dry, and then I'll be able to have this looking the way that I want without having to fight trying to turn it. And then I'll be able to top stitch it onto my exterior panel, and it'll look just like I sewed it, even though I didn't. Now that I have this all glued together, this is what we're looking like. And we're going to take our exterior piece that doesn't have the magnet on it, and we're going to lay this on top of here. And I'm going to take these clips off the side. And I'm going to add a couple of my flat clips to the bottom. And you want this to be centered, and then you could use some painter's tape or something to help you hold this down if you needed to. But you want to make sure that you keep about the same. You want this distance here and this distance here to be the same. So, and in the pattern, Brittany recommends that you start at the bottom and come up. There is a measurement from this top stitch seam for you to make a mark, because in the full size you would want to put a rivet. Given how small this is, I'm not going to be putting rivets, so I'm just going to start at the bottom and stitch up and back stitch here and again here. So I'm just going to try to hold this down and keep it as straight as possible. And you want it straight, so number one, it doesn't look crooked, but that's also part of your seam allowance for sewing the completed bag together. So I'm going to stop right there, and then I'm going to back stitch and then come back. And then so do that same thing for the other side. And then once I do the other side, then I can baste my bottom closed. And I might have folded this side in a little bit much. I'm going to try to push it out just a little bit. That might be better. Not really sure. We're going to go with it. It'll be fine. And back stitch. And now we have our adorable little slip pocket. Okay, I can top stitch my bottom, or baste my bottom closed. And now we're ready to move on to our gusset. So I've got my side panel and my base, and I'm going to clip these together. And then we're going to stitch across, well, let's try this clip. Stitch across that edge. And in the original pattern, or the pattern, I guess, I don't know what I'm saying, she has you butterfly this seam open and top stitch each side. I'm just going to fold it down to the base because my seam allowance is so small, I don't think I can get it open. But it's just to reduce bulk in that seam when you're attaching the gusset to your main panel. I'm going to take my other side gusset and add it to my base. Same process. And now we can open this out and top stitch. And I'm going to trim this edge down so that it's the same size. This is just for me shrinking it down. In the original pattern, there I go with the original pattern again, in the full size version of the pattern, you won't have that problem. It's just for me shrinking it. Because nothing is an exact measurement. You kind of have to round and go with it. So here's our little gusset. So we're going to take our front lower main panel and we are going to clip a center in our gusset. Oh, I have one on that side. Fun. We're going to match up that center. And then I'm going to take my stapler. Brittany highly recommends in the pattern using a stapler for this. My seam allowance is so small, so I'm going to get these as close to the edge as possible just to hold this together for me. Plus it keeps those clips out of my way since it is so small. I don't have all those extra clips hanging around. So I'm going to take my gusset and line it up at the top edge after I get my center, and maybe I can get it to line up and cooperate with me. I may have to put some clips in it to hold it just for me to staple it. There we go. So normally you would have a little more seam allowance to work with and you wouldn't have to be so close to the edge. And I'm going to snip the tiniest snips in my gusset to help that round that curve. And I may go ahead and just take this oddball staple out right here. But because my seam allowance is so small, I don't want to sew over any of the staples. So I'm trying to keep everything as close to the edge as I can get. And I may have to add a couple more snips. I don't want to add too many or go too in, because when we turn it, we could risk tearing. I think I might have got it there. Looks like it. We'll see how well it holds when I start sewing. That side was much easier. So again, I'm going to make some snips on the other side. That side lined up beautifully. That staple was way too far in. Okay, we're ready to sew. Back stitch at the beginning, and I'm just following that curve, and I'm going to go slow as I round the corner. Hand crank if you need to. Flatten everything out, keep it out of your way. And then back stitch again. And some snips. There we go. There it is. So I'm going to remove my staples, and then we're going to repeat that same process. So I'll go ahead and attach my back panel and sew it on and flip it right sides out. All right, I went ahead and attached my back and turned my bag out, and this is what it looks like. It is so cute. So, and I also repeated that same process to sew my lining. And because this bag is so small, I'm not doing the interior zipper pocket. So I'm going to do this as a drop-in. So I'm going to fold this top edge down and glue it, as well as same thing here, and glue it. And then I will put them together, and then we'll be back to top stitch. Okay, we've got it all glued together, and I put my handle in at the seam on the sides. So hopefully this glue is dry enough for me to top stitch. So I'm gonna do my best. I am going to stitch with it down on the base of my machine instead of trying to turn it and do it the normal way we would do a top stitch. Just because it is so small, and I know that I'm gonna have some, it's not undoable, it's just gonna be difficult, or challenging rather. Let's see, maybe I'll start on this side. Gotta move some of these clips out of the way. If you ever get it under the foot of your machine, you should be good to go. And I'm starting on my strap, and I'm going to back stitch and just take it in very small sections as I adjust. Small like my bag. And then move these clips out of my way. Just so I can see. If you had a cylinder arm, this would be a lot easier, but I do not. I'm going to add me a little piece of folded vinyl right there to help me get over that strap. Now when we get to the back, you want to fold your flap out of the way. You don't want to sew over it. And then I'm going to clip my threads where I started. And then when we get back to where I started, I will back stitch again. can use my lighter to singe the ends of any of those threads. And now I can just kind of tuck my lining down there out of the way. And ta-da! It's so cute. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of the videos in today's marathon. Be sure and like and subscribe. Have a great day.